One Piece is a metafictional story of manifestation. One that takes themes that are all intangible human experiences and turns them into a reality. Sometimes, in its expression of these themes, One Piece feels like a story that breaks the fourth wall. As a story that uses both the theoretical and practical expressions of these themes to push the plot forward. For example, the two main power systems, Devil Fruits and Haki, are physical manifestations of two human experiences we are all familiar with: dreams or desire and willpower. In chapter 1069, Dr. Vegapunk, the world's most respected mind, theorizes, all things are brought into this world with hope. Yes, even the devil fruits. Every devil fruit is a possibility for human evolution that someone desired. If only I could be like this. If only I could be like that. All of those powers represent the many branches of the future of humanity. Those with powers exist in different dimensions dreamed up by someone else before them. Based on Vegapunk's theory, devil fruits are literal manifestations of desire. To be honest, there are some fruits that I find very, very difficult to understand why anyone would desire them. For example, the jacket fruit, which allows a user to turn into a jacket to be worn by someone else. However, everything in real life at some point or another was probably considered an impossibility. Only those who are pushed into desperate situations of need, those who are open-minded enough to think freely, those who have the capacity to imagine the impossible, and only those who have the right amount of skill, innovation, and willpower have the capability to make their dreams come true. In chapter 597, Rayleigh, the right-hand man and first mate of the former Pirate King, gives Luffy a crash course on One Piece's second power system, Haki, before they begin their 2-year-long training. Haki is a power that lies dormant in people everywhere. The ability to sense spiritual energy and overpower enemies is something everyone possesses to some degree. But some people never discover it. They live their lives without ever reaching their full potential. To never doubt, that is power. Haki is willpower. There are 3 types of Haki. Number 1, observation Haki, which makes one more observant or able to predict others' moves and overall more sensitive to the auras around them. Number 2, armament Haki, which allows one to coat themselves, and in more advanced cases, their weapons, with a spiritual armor that makes them more tough or stronger. It also allows one to harm devil fruit users whose powers would otherwise make them impervious to physical blows. For example, Luffy's rubber fruit. Number 3, conqueror's Haki, the rarest of the 3, an embodiment of the spirit of the user. It allows someone with strong willpower to render people with weaker wills unconscious. There are more advanced forms and usages of Haki, but for the purpose of this essay, I'm going to stick to their most basic applications. If there is anyone who embodies strong desire and willpower, it is our protagonist, Luffy. Not only does he have his own devil fruit, one that is as limitless as dreams themselves, but he also probably has the strongest will and the loudest desire and dream in the story. It is no wonder that he is a capable user of all 3 types of Haki and has awakened his devil fruit. Ever since he was a kid, he has lived by his own personal mantra: I'm going to be the king of the pirates. If there's one thing that assists with manifestation, with confidence, with willpower, it's repetition and consistency. Luffy has uttered these words so many times. How could he not achieve his goals? Many have laughed in his face, and by his spirit, his actions, and determination, he has proved to them all that he is capable of accomplishing his dream. There's a third theme, however, that I believe has been subtly introduced into the One Piece world. Something that is often played for jokes and gags, but the more it comes up explicitly, the more I am inclined to believe that it's its own power system, or at the very least, a power that manifests itself in enhancing the powers of these other 2 established power systems in the One Piece world. That theme is love. In Season 1, Episode 9 of one of my favorite series of all time, Game of Thrones, Grandmaster Aemon Targaryen, one of the wisest men in the entirety of the series, says to a rash, emotional, and naive Jon Snow, love is the death of duty. After Jon's father is wrongfully imprisoned and sentenced to death, Jon's stepbrother, Robb, has decided to go to war to save their father. Jon is ready and willing to abandon his duties as a man of the Night's Watch to join his family's cause. Men of the Night's Watch are required to abandon all ties to family and their previous lives to devote the rest of their lives to the Watch. The punishment for desertion is death. Aemon is trying to teach Jon Snow that making choices for love can put himself, others, and his responsibilities at risk, and so he must make a choice, a thoughtful choice, to determine in that moment what is more important. But Game of Thrones is a hopeless story, while One Piece is a story that is built on hope and belief. Luffy is someone who sees it as his personal responsibility to protect the ones he loves. It is something that he learned from the person he got his devil fruit from, and his inspiration for becoming a pirate, Shanks. In Chapter 1, after being humiliated by a mountain bandit, Shanks comes to the rescue of Luffy stating, "You can pour drinks on me, you can throw food at me, you can even spit on me. I'll just laugh that stuff off, but nobody hurts a friend of mine." Shanks sacrificed an arm and possibly his own dreams to save Luffy's life. However, one may also say that Shanks sacrificed his arm and possibly his dreams to support Luffy's dream. In Luffy's case, love greatly enhances his ability to go after his own dream. To be a good captain and to become the king of the pirates, Luffy needs to be strong. He gathered a group of people who also had their own dreams and desires and inspired these individuals to develop and harness the willpower to pursue them. After seeing him act without doubt and without fear for the sake of protecting them and what they believe in, they had to acknowledge that if it is possible for him, then it must be possible for them as well. Luffy, with his willpower, powered by love, constantly exceeds his own boundaries to protect his friends and the dreams they believe in. We can note, however, Luffy isn't the only person enhanced or affected by love. The first time love is explicitly mentioned as a potential power is in chapter 431 by Vice Admiral Garp, Luffy's grandfather, when Garp pays him a visit in Water 7 after the events of Enies Lobby. Garp, one of the strongest and most powerful Marines of all time, punches Luffy to wake him up. Luffy exclaims that he was hurt by the punch, and his crew, in shock, observe that a normal punch should not be able to harm Luffy because of his body made rubber by his devil fruit. Luffy's grandfather simply remarks, "A fist of love cannot be blocked." At the time, it felt like a joke. A silly quote in line with how unserious One Piece could be at times. Not to mention, Garp is acknowledged to be extremely strong, so it could just be his brute strength. Even in retrospect, one might assume that Garp used Haki to punch Luffy, seeing as Haki wasn't established or even explained yet at that point in the story. Of course, this is a very probable explanation, however, love being explicitly mentioned as a reasoning for seemingly impossible or unexpected feats is something that occurs more than one would expect. If anyone knows about love, it's Sanji, our resident lover boy. Sanji is obsessed with women. He protects them with all his might, often to the detriment of his own personal safety. He picks flowers for them, cooks special meals for them. He has often mentioned the words "love is a hurricane," using love as a reason for the choices he makes. Yes, it is used as a gag most times, but Sanji, using love as reasoning for his decisions and abilities, has oftentimes been able to accomplish incredible feats. Chapter 76 was the first time Sanji used the "love is always a hurricane" line, during a moment when the crew was trying to figure out what was going on with Nami and why she betrayed them. It would not be the last time these words or that concept were mentioned in this story. In fact, in Thriller Bark, Sanji is captured and his shadow is stolen and placed into a penguin dog. A dog penguin? A zombie. The shadow, now attached to a zombie, was supposed to fully obey his new master, Gecko Moria. However, the zombie refused the control placed over it to protect Nami, and refused to strike the female warthog zombie, Lola. In chapter 453, the other zombies questioned how this penguin could be so strong and where he got the power to resist control. The Sanji zombie responded, "A power that can't be measured, a power that makes the impossible possible, a power that blows everything away. The name of that tempest is love." In chapter 1078, Sanji blocks a powerful punch from the S-shocked Seraphim with his face. Unmoved, he remarks, "What would you know about the power of love?" Yes, at this point in the story, one may attribute this feat to his awakened, biogenetically modified germal body. But Sanji's feats of love existed way before these genes were even awakened. Sanji is not only a lover boy, but an overall empath, and has often been first to determine when someone is struggling emotionally, when they are lying, and when they are in danger. He is acknowledged by Oda to be a specialist in observation haki, as Zoro is in armament and Luffy is in conqueror's haki, and I believe this empathy and love is what enhances his observation abilities. A few examples of this immediately come to mind, like when he knew all along that Robin was lying about betraying the crew in the Water 7 arc. In chapter 680, Punk Hazard Arc, Sanji comes to the rescue of Tashigi, a marine captain, from a significant distance away, exclaiming, "I hear a lady calling for me." When her soldiers ask what a pirate is doing there helping out a marine, Sanji responds, "I heard the sound of a lady's teardrops falling." In chapter 712 in the Dressrosa arc, after being beaten to a pulp, he says to Violet, a woman who is pretending to be an enemy for her safety and the safety of her family, "You are lying, Violet, my dear. I know that you have a pure, beautiful heart. Deep down, you are being forced into this by wicked people. I'm thinking about you, about the look I saw in your eyes. They spoke the truth. A million people might curse your name, but I will never doubt a woman's tears." More recently, in chapter 1064, Sanji shouts out that he has found Bonnie after he, Frankie, and Dr. Vegapunk scan an expansive battlefield. When Frankie asks if he actually did, Sanji responds, "When has my lady radar ever been wrong?" In this instance, even Vegapunk the scientist remarks, "That sounds very unscientific, but I'll take it on faith." All of Sanji's love instances are played as part of his gag, but as someone who is more connected to the expression of love than probably anyone else is, he is the strongest example of this theory. Sanji and Garp, however, are not the only ones who have acknowledged love as something to be taken seriously in the story. In chapter 357 in Water 7, Usopp is talking to Frankie about seeing someone repair their ship, the Going Merry, when they were on Skypiea. After hearing the details and acknowledging the care Usopp shows for Merry, Frankie explains to Usopp that he may have seen a Klabauterman. He's a legend passed down among sailors, a sprite who lives only on ships that have been truly cared for and treated well. I guess you could call him an incarnation of the ship. He holds a wooden mallet in one hand, wears a sailor's raincoat, and when misfortune befalls the ship, he runs around and warns everyone. Sometimes they say he saves sailors' lives. The ship is grateful to its crew in proportion to how well they treated it. I bet this ship really wanted to get you lot to the other shore, whatever it took to get you there, and the fact that it cared about its crew so much that it took on a human shape for that night means the ship must have been very happy indeed. The ship manifested a physical form just to assist the crew in their time of need on Skypiea, and showed up again on its own miraculously to retrieve them from Enies lobby, all in an effort to return the love that it received from them throughout their voyages together. Love is also explicitly mentioned by Granny Nyon, a previous empress of Amazon Lily, an island only inhabited by women, and men are banned. The current empress, one of the strongest women on the seas, and one of the 7 warlords, Boa Hancock, contracted a dangerous life-threatening illness after meeting and interacting with Luffy. In chapter 522, Granny Neon explains, the previous empress died of this illness, as did the empress before her. The illness that afflicts the Snake Princess is love sickness. The previous empresses died yearning for love. There's a saying in the Eastern Seas, love is always a hurricane. Love has rendered a powerful woman capable of expert usage of all 3 forms of Haki helpless. Additionally, in chapter 1060 in Egghead Island arc, we found out that S-Snake Seraphim, created by Vegapunk, was birthed out of bloodline elements from Hancock, has also inherited Hancock's love for Luffy, a love that transforms past even the original Hancock. Coincidentally, Hancock is a user of the Mero Mero no Mi, or Love fruit. According to the One Piece wiki website, the Mero Mero no Mi is a paramecia-type devil fruit that allows a range of attacks which use emotions of love, lust, or adoration to transform opponents to stone. Now stay with me here. If devil fruit powers are physical manifestations of strong desire, and the love fruit's effects manifest into a power that turns those who love the user into stone, is it possible, using that logic, for someone who is extremely susceptible to love to turn to stone without even needing the fruit? In the Return to Sabaody arc, chapter 602, Sanji turns to stone when seeing Boa Hancock for the first time from afar. Hancock had not even used her powers. Sanji merely turned to stone, being affected by her beauty after spending 2 years on an island away from biological women. In chapter 618, Sanji turns to stone again when seeing Shirahoshi the Mermaid Princess, stating, I realize now how lacking my imagination was. She's sublime. The greatest artist in the world could never capture such beauty. Sanji, being more in tune with his connection to love, is therefore more sensitive than most to love. Love is a central theme in One Piece and is shown probably most consistently in the backstories Oda created for the majority of his main characters. A majority of them have survived due to the love-inspired sacrifices of those closest to them. For example, Luffy's brother Ace's final words to him and everyone else were, "Thank you for loving me." Corazon's last words to Trafalgar Law as he closed the chest he was in to hide him were, "I love you." In the most recent episode of the anime and chapter 1104 of the manga, we see one of the most powerful expressions of love from Bartholomew Kuma, who previously had all of his humanity stripped from him when he was turned into a cyborg. Kuma bypasses science and logic to punch Saturn in an effort to save his daughter Bonnie. Both Saturn and Dr. Vegapunk are confused by Kuma's actions as, according to Vegapunk, after his kill switch was hit, Kuma should have been in a total vegetative state without the ability to act of his own free will or even carry out orders. Saturn demands, "Vegapunk, how do you explain all of this? Was it your doing?" Vegapunk responds, "Well, I suppose it must look that way. I could call it the power of love if it makes you feel any better." Saturn responds, "I see. Then it is a flaw in the human form, an error in the programming. Farewell, I have no use for you men," as his body regenerates from the blow. In retrospect, with the current One Piece arc Elbaph in mind, this quote seems more and more relevant. Saturn is inhuman, demon-like. He appears to be immortal as he was able to regenerate from all of the life-threatening damage he received. Like him, the God's Knights introduced in the Elbaph arc seem to have the same regenerative ability. With their main fighters Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji being absent, Luffy's crew seemed to be helpless against the God's Knights. That is, until Scopa-Gaban, the left arm of the former Pirate King, appeared and sliced one of the God's Knights in half. A few chapters earlier, Gaban appeared for the first time in the present-day story. He introduced himself to Luffy and Zoro in chapter 1139 as a preacher of love and seemed to be extremely powerful, giving both Luffy and Zoro a run for their money when he challenged them to a short duel. After determining their abilities, Gaban leaves telling them, "If Elbaph is still intact by the time you're leaving this island, come and see me again." This implies to me that Gaban has something to share with them to help them along their journey. Later on in chapter 1152, he tells Luffy, referring to the God's Knights, "Make a mental note of how you use your conqueror's Haki. They are not immortal." He acknowledges that there is more than one of them who can use conqueror's Haki, remarking that Zoro seems quite at ease with it. To everyone's surprise and dismay, Zoro reveals that he was even unaware that he was capable of using it. However, for the purpose of this essay, my focus is on Sanji. Sanji asks Gaban, "Hey Gramps, what about me?" We never get an on-screen response from Gaban. However, there is a panel of Sanji seemingly reacting surprised to whatever Gaban said to him off-screen. What could the preacher of love have possibly told the lover boy of One Piece to warrant his shock? Gaban, along with Shanks and Rayleigh, were all members of the crew of the previous Pirate King, Goldie Roger. All three of these people's lives have been aligned with Luffy's journey to becoming the new Pirate King. Shanks was the one who introduced Luffy to his dream and was the first to support that dream. He also introduced us to the devil fruits, which are manifested dreams and desires. Rayleigh was the man who taught Luffy how to harness his willpower and manifest it into a more tangible form that is Haki. I believe that it will be the self-proclaimed preacher of love, Scopa-Gaban, who will teach Luffy and potentially his crewmates to learn and or fully master the Haki they already use and to strengthen it effectively with the power of love, something that Sanji seems to have the most experience with. In a series that embraces central themes of dreams, desire, and willpower, love as a power system is nowhere near far-fetched. Oda often writes with a lot of humor. However, he has proven time and time again that even some of his most ridiculous gags, especially when it comes to Sanji, can be used effectively to push the plot forward. In the Sabaody Archipelago arc, Sanji's ridiculously terribly drawn wanted poster was used to foreshadow his interactions with Duval and the flying fish riders. On Fishman Island, Sanji's life-threatening nosebleed when interacting with mermaids for the first time was used to introduce us to the laws against fishmen and or merfolk donating blood to humans as a result of years of horrible racism and oppression that humans inflicted upon them. This tied into Jinbei, regardless of the law, donating his blood to save Luffy's life at the end of the arc. And in chapter 1044, when Luffy awakens Gear 5, Saturn and the rest of the Gorosei talk among themselves about Luffy's Gum Gum Devil Fruit. They state, Zone fruits contain a will of their own, and this particular fruit has the name of a god. The other name of the gum gum fruit is the zone type human fruit, mythical type mortal Nika. Possessing a body with the properties of rubber and fighting in whatever way he fancies, bringing smiles to the faces of the people. The warrior of liberation, also known as Nika the sun god. Awakening brings his rubbery body greater physical strength and freedom. It is said that in all the world there is no power more ridiculous. If there's nothing more ridiculous than Luffy's power, then I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that love is always an option. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video all the way through. If you've enjoyed my content, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know what you think about this theory.